Leadership is often misunderstood as dominance, brilliance, or the loud assertion of authority. In reality, leadership reaches its highest form when it subdues ego in favor of unity. History repeatedly shows that the most decisive moments are not always marked by grand speeches or dramatic battles, but by quiet, difficult choices made to protect collective purpose. The tension between ego and unity sits at the heart of leadership, and nowhere is this more evident than in moments when strong personalities threaten the harmony of a larger mission. Ego is not inherently evil. Confidence, ambition, and pride in one's abilities are often what propel individuals into leadership roles in the first place. Without ego, few would take responsibility in moments of crisis or believe they could influence outcomes against overwhelming odds. However, ego becomes dangerous when it begins to overshadow the mission itself. When a leader starts to measure success in terms of personal recognition rather than shared achievement, unity begins to fracture. Decisions become about being right instead of doing what is right. In such moments, leadership quietly transforms into self-interest. Unity, on the other hand, is fragile. It cannot be commanded into existence through rank or fear. It is built through trust, mutual respect, and a shared sense of purpose. Unity requires leaders to recognize that success is rarely the product of a single mind or personality. It emerges from coordinated effort, compromise, and the willingness to place collective goals above personal pride. This is why leadership rooted in unity often appears less glamorous than leadership driven by ego, yet it is infinitely more powerful. In large organizations, alliances, or nations at war, unity becomes a strategic necessity rather than a moral preference. Fragmentation at the top inevitably cascades downward. When senior leaders are divided, their followers sense it immediately. Conflicting signals, public disagreements, and personal rivalries create confusion and weaken morale. People begin choosing sides rather than focusing on objectives. Energy that should be spent advancing the mission is wasted managing tension and repairing damage caused by internal conflict. A leader who understands unity recognizes that authority does not mean unchecked freedom. It means stewardship. Authority exists to align efforts, not to magnify individual status. This understanding requires humility, a trait often mistaken for weakness. In truth, humility is one of the strongest qualities a leader can possess. It allows a leader to listen, to admit mistakes, and to accept that others may have better ideas. Humility disarms ego and creates space for collaboration. One of the greatest challenges for leaders is managing highly capable individuals who possess strong personalities. Talent and ego often travel together. High performers tend to know their value, and that awareness can easily tip into arrogance. The temptation for leaders is either to tolerate disruptive behavior because of results or to engage in constant power struggles. Neither approach serves unity. True leadership lies in setting clear boundaries. Excellence is valued, but not at the expense of cohesion. Unity does not demand uniformity of thought. In fact, effective unity thrives on disagreement and debate. The difference lies in how conflict is handled. Healthy leadership encourages dissent behind closed doors and decisiveness once a course is chosen. Ego-driven leadership, by contrast, seeks validation rather than truth. It resents challenge and interprets disagreement as disloyalty. Over time, this suppresses honest communication, leaving leaders isolated and blind to emerging problems. When unity is prioritized, leaders understand that public alignment matters even when private disagreement exists. This is not hypocrisy, it is discipline. Teams function best when they know that decisions once made will be supported. Publicly undermining leadership decisions fractures trust and invites chaos. Leaders who protect unity are willing to resolve conflicts directly, privately, and firmly before they damage the broader mission. Leadership grounded in unity also requires emotional intelligence. Ego reacts instinctively. Unity requires restraint. A leader must recognize when personal feelings are influencing professional judgment. Pride, resentment, and the desire for recognition can subtly distort decision-making. Leaders committed to unity regularly question their own motives. They ask whether an action serves the mission or merely their self-image. This internal discipline separates leaders who endure from those who eventually self-destruct. Another critical aspect of unity-centered leadership is the willingness to make uncomfortable decisions. Sometimes unity cannot be preserved through compromise alone. There are moments when a single individual, regardless of talent or past contributions, becomes a destabilizing force. In such cases, protecting unity may require confrontation, reassignment, or removal. These decisions are rarely popular and often misunderstood. Yet leadership is not about pleasing everyone. It is about safeguarding the mission. What distinguishes ego-driven removals from unity-driven ones is intent. Ego seeks revenge or dominance. Unity seeks stability and effectiveness. Leaders acting in the interest of unity approach such decisions with clarity rather than emotion. They focus on long-term consequences rather than short-term relief. Even when firmness is required, the underlying motivation remains the health of the collective. Unity-focused leadership also acknowledges interdependence. No leader operates in isolation. Every success rests on the efforts of countless others whose names may never be remembered. Recognizing this fosters gratitude and respect. Leaders who credit their teams rather than themselves strengthen loyalty and motivation. People are far more willing to give their best to leaders who see them as partners rather than tools. In contrast, ego-centered leaders often believe legacy is not personal acclaim but institutional strength. Unity also demands consistency, rank, or personal relationships. Trust erodes. Leaders committed to unity hold themselves to the same standards they expect of others. This consistency reinforces credibility and reinforces the idea that the mission outweighs individual privilege. The pressure of crisis often battles. Leaders must actively cultivate unity through clear communication, transparent decision-making, and firm boundaries. Unity requires maintenance. Neglect allows ego to fill the vacuum. The paradox of leadership is that the more a leader chases personal glory, the less effective they become. Conversely, the more they invest in unity, the more influence they gain. People naturally follow leaders who put the group first. Such leaders inspire trust because their actions consistently demonstrate alignment between words and values. Trust, once established, becomes a powerful force multiplier. In the end, leadership is a moral choice as much as a strategic one. Every decision carries an implicit answer to a simple question. Is this about me, or is this about us? Leaders who repeatedly choose us build organizations capable of extraordinary achievement. They create environments where talent flourishes without tearing the fabric of cooperation. Leadership is not about ego because ego isolates, divides, and ultimately weakens. Leadership is about unity because unity multiplies strength, sharpens purpose, and transforms individual effort into collective success. History remembers leaders not for how loudly they asserted themselves, but for how effectively they aligned others toward a common goal. In that alignment lies the true measure of leadership. Great leadership is rarely revealed in moments of comfort, applause, or ease. It is exposed in moments of pressure, uncertainty, and consequence. Tough decisions are the true testing ground of leadership because they demand more than intelligence or authority. They demand courage, responsibility, and moral clarity. Anyone can lead when choices are simple and outcomes are obvious. Only great leaders can lead when every option carries risk, criticism, and cost. A tough decision is not defined by how complicated it is, but by what it requires the leader to sacrifice. Often, The sacrifice is personal comfort, popularity, reputation, or emotional attachment. Leaders face moments when doing the right thing conflicts directly with doing the easy thing. In those moments, leadership ceases to be a title and becomes a burden. The weight of knowing that lives, livelihoods, morale, or futures depend on a single decision is immense, and many shrink from it. Great leaders do not. One of the defining features of tough decisions is uncertainty. Leaders rarely have complete information. They must act with imperfect data, conflicting advice, and limited time. Waiting for certainty can be as damaging as making the wrong choice. Great leaders understand that indecision is itself a decision, one that often allows problems to grow until they become crises. Acting decisively in uncertainty requires confidence tempered by humility, a willingness to accept responsibility if the outcome falls short. Tough decisions also isolate leaders. Consultation is important, but the final responsibility cannot be shared. Advisors may recommend, teams may debate, but the leader must choose. When consequences arrive, praise or blame eventually rests on that choice. This loneliness is one of the least discussed aspects of leadership. Great leaders accept it as part of the role rather than seeking comfort in consensus or hiding behind committees. Another hallmark of tough decisions is resistance. Rarely does a difficult choice please everyone. Some will disagree sincerely, others emotionally, and some politically. Leaders must endure criticism, misunderstanding, and even hostility. Weak leaders measure decisions by immediate approval. Great leaders measure them by long-term impact. They understand that popularity is fleeting, but consequences are permanent. Many tough decisions involve people rather than strategies. Reassigning, demoting, or removing individuals is among the most painful responsibilities of leadership. These choices are emotionally heavy because they affect real lives, not abstract plans. Compassion does not eliminate the necessity of action. In fact, true compassion often requires firmness. Allowing dysfunction to continue for the sake of comfort ultimately harms more people than decisive intervention. Great leaders distinguish between kindness and avoidance. Avoidance masquerades as empathy but often stems from fear. It delays necessary action and allows problems to deepen. Kindness, by contrast, can coexist with firmness. A leader can act decisively while still treating people with dignity and respect. The toughness lies not in cruelty, but in the willingness to confront reality rather than escape it. Tough decisions also test a leader's integrity. When faced with pressure from powerful interests, public opinion, or personal gain, leaders reveal their true values. It is easy to compromise principles incrementally, justifying each step as pragmatic. Over time, such compromises hollow out leadership. Great leaders draw clear lines and defend them, even when doing so carries personal cost. Their authority comes not from force, but from consistency between values and actions. History shows that leaders are often judged harshly in the moment and generously in retrospect. Decisions that appear harsh or misguided at the time may later be recognized as necessary. This delayed validation requires inner strength. Leaders must be willing to endure being misunderstood. They cannot rely on immediate affirmation to sustain them. Instead, they rely on conviction grounded in purpose. Tough decisions demand clarity of mission. Leaders who lack a clear understanding of their core objectives struggle to choose under pressure. When everything feels important, nothing truly is. Great leaders anchor decisions to fundamental goals. They ask what best serves the mission, not what best serves their image. This focus cuts through noise and simplifies complexity, even when the choice remains difficult. Another challenge of tough decision-making is emotional management. Leaders are human. They feel fear, doubt, anger, and regret. Pretending otherwise leads to denial rather than control. Great leaders acknowledge emotions without allowing them to dominate judgment. They create space between feeling and action. This emotional discipline enables them to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. Tough decisions often involve trade-offs rather than clear victories. Choosing one path means abandoning another, sometimes forever. Leaders must live with opportunity cost. Regret is unavoidable, but paralysis is optional. Great leaders accept that no decision is perfect. They aim for the best available option, not an imaginary ideal. This realism distinguishes effective leadership from wishful thinking. Accountability is another defining aspect. When tough decisions produce negative outcomes, great leaders do not deflect blame downward. They take responsibility. This does not mean accepting fault for everything, but it does mean owning the decision-making process. Accountability builds trust, even in failure. People are more willing to follow leaders who stand by their choices than those who hide from them. In contrast, leaders who avoid tough decisions often justify themselves with explanations rather than results. They blame circumstances, subordinates, or timing. Over time, this erodes credibility. Teams lose confidence in leaders who cannot act decisively or accept responsibility. Trust, once lost, is difficult to restore. Tough decisions also shape organizational culture. When leaders consistently make hard but fair choices, they set expectations. People learn that performance, integrity, and alignment matter. Ambiguity fades. While such cultures may feel demanding, they are often more stable and resilient. Unclear or inconsistent leadership breeds anxiety in politics. Clear, tough leadership fosters focus. Courage plays a central role in tough decision-making. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. Leaders who wait to feel fearless will wait forever. Great leaders act while afraid, guided by purpose rather than comfort. This courage inspires others, not because it is loud, but because it is authentic. Time pressure intensifies the difficulty of decisions. Crises compress timelines and magnify consequences. Leaders must balance speed with thoughtfulness. Acting too slowly can be disastrous. Acting too quickly can be reckless. Great leaders develop the ability to prioritize information rapidly, identify what truly matters, and commit to action. This skill is forged through experience, reflection, and accountability. Another dimension of tough decisions is the willingness to say no. Opportunities can be as dangerous as threats. Not every attractive option aligns with the mission. Leaders who lack discipline chase too many paths and dilute focus. Saying no disappoints people and closes doors. Great leaders understand that restraint is a form of strength. Concentration amplifies impact. Tough decisions also require learning from failure. Not every hard choice leads to success. What defines great leaders is not perfection, but adaptation. They examine outcomes honestly, adjust strategies, and refine judgment. They do not allow pride to prevent learning. In this way, tough decisions become teachers rather than scars. The personal cost of tough decisions is often invisible. Leaders may lose friendships, face public criticism, or endure private doubt. The role can be emotionally exhausting. Great leaders find resilience not in praise, but in purpose. They reconnect with why they lead and who they serve. This sense of purpose sustains them when external validation disappears. Ultimately, tough decisions define great leaders because they reveal character under pressure. Skills can be taught, strategies can be copied, but character is tested. When forced to choose between comfort and responsibility, ego and mission, fear and courage, great leaders choose responsibility, mission, and courage. Leadership without tough decisions is management. Leadership with tough decisions is stewardship. It is the acceptance of burden for the sake of others. History remembers such leaders not because they were flawless, but because they were willing to act when action was hardest. Great leaders are not those who avoid pain, but those who absorb it so others do not have to. They make decisions that protect the long-term good at the expense of short-term ease. In doing so, they transform authority into trust and power into purpose. Tough decisions do not merely test leaders, they create them. Each difficult choice sharpens judgment, deepens humility, and strengthens resolve. Over time, these moments accumulate, shaping leaders who are steady under pressure and clear in chaos. In the end, greatness in leadership is not measured by how many decisions are made, but by how many hard decisions are faced honestly and carried through responsibly. That is why tough decisions do not simply accompany great leadership, they define it.